Good morning. I'm Lindsay Strand, filling in for the vacationing Bob Bruce. 1 out of every 8 Americans is an adult child of an alcoholic parent. Whether they drink or not, the children of alcoholics live with psychological and physical scars that are carried on into their adulthood. Most grow up unable to lead lives free from guilt, shame, and fear. My guest today grew up in homes that were dominated by alcoholism, yet it was a problem that was never discussed. They all remember their childhood as being emotionally traumatic, and they are here today to talk about what they experienced as a child of an adult alcoholic and how they have learned to cope with the devastating effects it has had on their lives. That's next on Twin Cities Live. It is not easy for all of these people to join us today to tell their story, but their story is one that so many people can relate to. And Kathy, let me ask you first of all, what was it like growing up in the home with an alcoholic?
I think my greatest experience in growing up with an alcoholic parent was that I felt like I wasn't good enough. That as a child I felt like I didn't know how to please my parent or how to win his or her approval.
And when you felt that, did you know that you had an alcoholic parent when you were growing up?
No, I knew that alcohol was a problem in my home, but I just thought that if that parent would cut down on the drinking or if something else would happen, that would make it better. I didn't ever label it alcoholism.
What kinds of memories are real prominent in your mind when you think back to being a child?
I remember a lot of good times when I was a very young child, but as I grew older, the alcoholism got a lot worse, and I remember my parent being very critical, very unpredictable, very chaotic, very hard to please, very angry, very blaming.
When you became an adult, what was your view of alcohol?
I still hadn't really viewed the problem in my family as alcoholism, and so I began some of my own drinking in my teens and 20s. And so it's not that I labeled alcohol bad. In fact, I thought that I could do it differently than the way my parent drank.
And did you?
Yes. I did it differently for a time, and then I also became alcoholic.
How did you recognize that?
Actually, I feel very lucky in that in learning about the impact of my family on me as an adult child, I began to also look at my own drinking. And it was actually in the intervention on my parents' drinking that I decided that I needed to sober up.
Lenny, you are also an adult child of an alcoholic parent. Did you drink?
Yes, I did. I started drinking at age 14 and got into other chemicals around the same time, age 15 and 16, a lot of street drugs. Amphetamines, marijuana, alcohol, basically anything that was available. I started...
Out of control?
I believe I was out of control with my usage by the time I was 16. And by the time I was 17, I believe I was almost in the chronic later stages of addiction where I was using predominantly on a daily basis. And that's something that I did not plan and something that I did not want to happen to me, but it did.
Why do you think that did happen?
It could be a number of reasons. I really don't have any facts or things of that nature to back it up, but a lot of it had to do with how I was feeling about myself at the time. I was very self-doubting. I lacked self-confidence. My self-worth was very low. My self-esteem was almost non-existent. I was somewhat introverted before I started using chemicals, and I recall a lot of fear, much like I have now, but I'm overcoming that. But
when you think back to your childhood, what are some of the vivid memories?
A lot of what I recall being raised in an alcoholic household is having fear and a lot of aloneness, being isolated, and being afraid to talk about how I feel and what's going on with me. I was scared a lot, and a lot of that I can't describe because I don't know what it was. I just knew that it was.
Now, your father was the one who was drinking when you were growing up in your family. How did your mother relate to you? Did she kind of depend on you to be the man of the household?
Well, no, what my mother did is, in a number of ways, she tried to control my dad's usage through guilting him about the children. And such as you never spend time with them, sending me off with my dad to collect his paycheck over in Minneapolis, thinking that possibly if I'm with him, he won't go to the bar and come back sooner and bring back most of the money.
And how old were you when that was happening?
It started when I was about 6 or 7.
6 years old.
I'm my dad's namesake. I'm Little Lenny, as I was raised. And even at that point, I didn't know it at the time, but I was being groomed as somewhat of a caretaker of him, and I didn't know I was feeling responsible for him until I got in recovery myself, and indeed I was feeling responsible for his usage, that it was my responsibility when I was with him to bring him back with the paycheck.
Laura,
And,
let me ask you, let's go on here, and
Sure.
let me ask you, was it ever talked about in your home that there was an alcoholic in your family when you were growing up?
Not at all. In fact, until I got older, I really didn't notice it. The time I remember it is when we used to live at our one house. I'm from a small town, and I used to sit upstairs and hear my mom and dad argue, and that's the most that I really, really remember. Now, more so, my father he's more or less an angry type drinker. When you try to tell him not to drink, he gets very angry, and it's almost, because my parents also smoke too, so it's like that's a thorn in their side when you mention something. And my mom is not a drinker either. She could be out all night and have like maybe 2 drinks or something like that.
Is it talked about today in your family?
Not really. It's, like I said, again, it's a touchy subject. If he's drinking at home and stuff, you know, it's like it's 7-Up or something, or when we go out, it's very strong drinks. And
They
like
don't know that it had such an impact on your life.
No, they have no idea that I used to sit upstairs, and none whatsoever. And so that's why when I was asked to come on here, I thought maybe this is a way I could maybe deal with it. But no, I used to sit upstairs a lot.
Have you turned to drinking at all?
No. I drink, like I said, maybe socially, if that's what you want to call it, but not very much at all.
Now, Mike, you have not been drinking either.
Well, I'm not an alcoholic. I do drink.
You do drink, but you have not been an alcoholic,
No.
but you are an adult child. Do you have a family yourself?
I have a wife.
Any children?
None.
Why?
I think for me the biggest fear in having children is the responsibility. Yeah, I'm terrified of being trapped with a responsibility like I had as a child. As a child, I felt very responsible for the happiness, especially of my mother, and who was not the alcoholic. My father was the alcoholic.
Is there a fear that if you have kids yourself, that this may be something that would skip a generation and be passed on to them?
I'm not too concerned. I've never thought about that fear. My fear is mainly what it would do to me and the feelings I would have being a parent of just this. I'd be lost. You know, I'd lose myself in the responsibility, and I'm terrified of that.
Emily Marlin, you are a marriage and family counselor. You also are an adult child of an alcoholic parent, and you have written a book on this topic. We hear some of the same words coming back here today: fear, lack of self-esteem. Are these stories representative of what you can find with adult children of alcoholic parents?
I think every story I identify with, I think they're all very real and very powerful messages of what the disease of alcoholism can do to a family. And I think it's very important to remember that it's the whole family that's affected, not just the person who has the drinking problem. And my book, Hope, I think really wants to address the many strengths and the things that adult children can do to share their secrets and talk about their own disease and what happened in their own families, and how much better they're able to cope with their lives, knowing the fact that they no longer have to keep the secret. And I think the fact that the people here are talking about it, and the people in the audience are also able to raise their hands and say that they know something about the disease of alcoholism, is a huge, giant step in the right direction.
Let's try and establish something right off the bat here. You have used the word disease twice now in the conversation.
Yes,
Is
I
it a
think it's a
disease?
physical, mental, and spiritual disease that affects every single person in the family. And even when it skips a generation, in many cases, some people are brought up in families where their parents don't drink at all, but their grandparents drank, and the very same dynamics go on, and the same kind of behavior and the same kind of attitudes. So it's in the family system, and I think it's important to look at the family over several generations to see how pervasive these patterns are and how history does unfortunately repeat itself. But I think the good news is that we have a lot more information today, and that we're able to really take note of our own behavior and of the behavior of people around us. And there is a lot of hope out there, and there's a lot of help available.
And we want to talk more about that when we continue in just a minute. We are talking about the adult children of alcoholic parents. Stay with us.
Jumping from store to store, trying to find the lowest prices on toys is a tough game to play. But not when you land at Children's Palace, where you'll discover our low price on Galoob's Mr. Game Show, just $89.99 every day. 10 ways to play, but get it right.
Correctamundo, you win the grand prize.
'Cause he hosts the fun. So play the game you'll always win. Come to Children's Palace and discover how much less toys can cost.
If you're hungry for something new, taste all the things walnuts can do. Walnuts on chocolate icing, party foods with the crunch on top. Walnuts, so enticing, great new taste, never stop with Diamond Walnut. The goodness goes on and on.
This Christmas, Target has some special gift ideas lined up. Colorful fashion fleeceware separates. Men and women, 2 for $12. Larger women, 2 for $14. Boys and girl sizes are also on sale. So do your shopping in a few easy steps. Target. Come celebrate the season.
Become a dental assistant at Lakeland Academy. Start a career in the dental field, helping others. Be a professional. In 8 short months, you'll be ready for work.
I got a job. I got a job. I got a job.
We'll help you find a job when you graduate. Call 827-5656. Lakeland Medical Dental Academy. Call 827-5656. Call now, 827-5656.
What do you do when someone you love has a heart attack? First comes the shock, followed by the realization of the long road to recovery that lies ahead. There is treatment available for the person stricken, but what about the needs of the other victim in this crisis? What we're talking about is the cardiac spouse, the victim who is actually often overlooked, according to author Rhoda Levin, who should know because she was one. Share in the experiences of Rhoda and other cardiac survivors Monday, December 7th on Twin Cities Live. Call for your free tickets, 641-1298. Emily, tell us, when we talk here about an actual recovery process, there is a kind of a recovery process that an adult child of an alcoholic parent has to go through, whether or not they have turned to drinking.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to just draw you out here a little bit on that.
Well, I think there's a lot of help available, and I think the most important thing to remember is that it's very difficult for most adult children of alcoholics to, 1, admit that they might need help, and 2, to get help. Because they've had to survive and had to do a lot on their own. And so they really have this kind of independence, and I'll take care of everything all the time, and it's going to be okay, which is a big myth, unfortunately. But it's what they really have had to strive for. And I think as adults, if they can really say, I think I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, they don't even have to know for sure, but they can just think that maybe the drinking in the family really affected them, and they can share that with someone else who comes from a family where there was a disease process going on. It's a huge relief. Just the fact of saying, I think I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, or I'm an adult child of an alcoholic too. And the many support groups, the self-help groups and the therapy groups, the treatment centers that focus on the family, these are all indications that people are more and more realizing that there's lots of treatment and there's lots of help available for adult children. They just have to ask for it, which is, of course, not an easy task.
If you don't see a drinking problem with yourself, what is it that you can accomplish by going to one of these groups?
Well, it's not just in terms of not drinking or drinking. That certainly is one big issue, and ACOAs are at a very high risk for becoming alcoholics or becoming involved with alcoholics or other people with addictive histories. But I think the important thing for them is to realize that it's just very pervasive in terms of all their attitudes, in terms of their relationships especially. It comes out loud and clear because there is usually a lack of trust, and it's very hard to have close relationships when you can't trust people. And trust is a very big issue for ACOAs.
Lenny, was it easy for you to admit that you were an adult child of an alcoholic parent?
That was almost more difficult than admitting my own addiction and getting help for that. I was still into a high degree of denial about being an adult child after 8 years of sobriety. I lived in a fantasy world about that was a non-issue, that everything's okay now because I'm taking care of myself, and that's basically what I've been doing since 6 years old, is taking care of myself. And I deluded myself into believing that it was a non-issue, when in actuality the facts were it was, and it was a real big issue in regards to me getting close with other people. It was an intimacy issue, it was a trust issue, and it was a real big issue on me reaching out and asking for help and getting my needs and wants met from other people.
And did you find that making that step made the difference in the relationships that you could have? I mean, was the fear level down? Was the ability to be intimate much greater?
I believe that fear of intimacy, that fear of reaching out and asking for help is still there, but what has changed is I'm aware of it, and I'm able to cope and deal with it differently than in the past, where I was into a lot of denial about it. I had a lot of false pride, a lot of pride about being self-sufficient, being a survivor, and I don't need anybody, and you know, I can do it myself, and if I can't do it myself, then I won't do it. I won't ask anybody for assistance.
We have someone who is, excuse me, but we have someone who's called in with a question. Go ahead, good morning, you're on Twin Cities Live.
Yes, I'm a daughter of a recovering alcoholic. He's been sober for about 10 years now, and now I have 2 children of my own, and I find myself acting a lot like my mother and trying to make things all right, trying to keep the stress between my husband and my children down, trying to be the buffer in the family. And I'm finding out that I'm causing a lot of problems between my husband and myself and my children, and I just don't know what to do.
Emily?
Yeah, I think this is very common, and I think that most ACOAs want to be perfect parents, and just being a good enough parent is not good enough. And I think that that kind of perfectionism really makes it real tough. And I think all of us, whether we're from alcoholic families or not, we tend to do what we saw our parents do, so that we have to realize that today we do have a choice, that we can try to remember what happened in our own experience and try to do things a little bit differently. But the important thing is not to be so tough on ourselves, and I'm sure this woman is really probably doing a much better job than she's able to give herself credit for doing.
Let's go ahead and take another phone call right now. Good morning.
Morning. I'm an adult grandchild, in a sense, and we were doing some tracing. Am I on?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
That's scary. When I'm an adult grandchild, my father didn't drink and my uncle didn't drink, but my cousins and my brother and I are all alcoholic and chemically dependent. And we have a very strange last name, so anybody with that last name we know is related. And I just met with a man who we were trying to trace back as part of our family. And my first question to him was, "Are you an alcoholic?" And he laughed. He says, "Yeah, I know why you're asking." He says, "My brother died of complications from alcoholism, and he's got alcoholism in his family." And we traced it back, and we went 4 generations back, and we definitely have alcoholism in our family tree. And how it skipped my dad and my uncle, we have no idea, because they were not alcoholic or chemically dependent.
Emily,
And
let's just stop right there and establish how likely is it that you are an adult child of an alcoholic parent that you will go on to drink?
Well, I think you have a 50-50 chance, and I think that the statistics are higher if you're a male child of a male alcoholic. It's 1 in 4. It's 1 in 3 if you're a female child of a female alcoholic. But I think it's important to remember, as this woman pointed out, that the disease does go through many generations, and that even if people don't drink in the family, their behavior is still very similar to the person who's drinking, and so that you're still dealing with the same issues and the same problem. So that I think it is good to look at your family tree and to see that it's not just one person, and that no one is really at fault. There's no blame to be attached to anyone, because it really is something that affected the whole family, the people who drank in the family and the people who didn't drink as well.
Who in the family is likely to be most impacted in terms of the order of the children?
Well, I think it varies according to how serious the drinking was in the family, at what age the child was, in terms of the sibling position. Sometimes the oldest child, and sometimes it's the youngest child, because the disease might have progressed much farther by the time the youngest kid becomes a teenager, say. So that I think that it really depends, and it's hard to say which one. And also, some people who look like they were least affected are the most affected, because what ACOAs do so often is that they're laughing on the outside, but they're really crying on the inside. And that wounded child is really covered up, and it's very hard to see, because this person looks terrific, they talk smart, they're successful, they dress well. Who's to know? But inside, they know that something is very wrong, and that there's still a lot of leftover pain and a lot of feelings that have been buried for a very long time. So you can't really tell from the outside what's going on the inside.
I have a question, because I'm the youngest, and it really did affect me. I got the brunt of everything from my older siblings. You know, they do something wrong and I'd catch it. My question is that now, as a recovering adult child, I'm looking at my brothers and sisters and their family, and they're dysfunctioning, and I don't know how to help them.
Well, I think that the way that you can help them best is just by being a very good example and really being in recovery yourself, and they'll see you. Believe me, people notice when people are getting better, and that is absolutely the best thing that you can possibly do. And it's very interesting that there seems to be kind of a domino effect in families, that when one person, just as with alcoholism, people start to fall, also in recovery, people start to get help and start to realize, hey, you know, he really seems to have his life together, and he's doing a lot better. Maybe he knows something I don't know, and he's getting help. Maybe I'll go for help too. So you don't have to really give them any kind of party line about it. You just be who you are and take responsibility, and believe me, they're going to notice.
Let me ask each of the 4 of you, is the key here that you individually have to come to recognize that you have a problem that you want to deal with here? Is it the individual that has to take that first step with the adult children? Laura?
Absolutely. For me, it was so much of admitting I had a problem. I didn't want to do that, and 8 years ago, when my father went through treatment for alcoholism, I said I didn't have a problem. And it wasn't until about 4 years ago that my wife says, you need to go to get some help.
What did she notice?
I was struggling in the relationship. I was so selfish. I have a hard time giving to people. I don't know anything about being close. I can't get angry at her. It's like I'd hold my anger, no matter how angry I get, I'd just go sit in another room. And I'd take it out on her some other way, and she couldn't take that. It was too painful.
And so she was the one that said to you,
she finally
you
said,
have to recognize.
Or I'm out. And that was probably the most loving thing anybody ever did for me in my life.
And when we come back, we are going to talk about some ways that people can identify themselves, whether or not they have a problem, and talk more about steps that they can take to
It's my steak place.
Round, round it, great deeds.
It's our family place.
Ground, round, my ground, round. It's our lunch place.
Ribs, ribs, and more ribs. Save $1 on great rib combos like steak and ribs, chicken and ribs, and more. Irresistible at $1 off.
Ground, round, my ground, round.
It's our game place.
For ribs, make it your place. A.
B.
C. Your Sesame Street Live friends are practicing the alphabet.
E?
So they can teach it to their new friend Tee from another planet, where they obviously don't have any alphabet at all. So come to the brand new Sesame Street Live show. Singing, dancing, fun, and 26 fantastic letters.
Eat it.
We think she almost got it.
Big Bird discovers the ABCs in an all-new Sesame Street Live, coming to Met Center December 2nd through the 6th. Tickets on sale now at Met Center and Dayton's.
Hello, I'm Frank Blair. And hello again. You've probably seen me on TV talking about the advantages of the Guardian Plan, the insurance-funded prearranged funeral program. I believe in prearrangement. It's practical and loving. That's why I have the Guardian Plan program myself. I planned everything in the comfort of my own living room. I determined how much to spend and on what. And that amount is guaranteed never to increase, even if inflation reaches double digits again. I've made the Guardian Plan program part of my personal and financial planning. Shouldn't you make it part of yours?
If you'd like to learn more about funeral prearrangement, call 1-800-9-CARING for your free copy of this informative booklet.
And tell them Frank Blair told you to call.
The Guardian Plan program is sponsored by these fine funeral homes in your area.
The bad news is you will recognize someone you know when you see this show, and it could be yourself that you recognize. The good news is there is hope, and what we are talking about is compulsivity. If you or anyone you know shows signs of being compulsive, then you will want to join us on Tuesday, December 8th. Sandra Simpson-Lassard will be here to share her story about overcoming this sickness. Also in our studio will be Mick Hunter, coordinator of the Compulsivity Clinics of America, to tell us how we can stop this behavior. It could be running up the credit cards, overeating, undereating, or even men. Whatever the addiction, you will want to be here on Tuesday, December 8th to find out what you can do to battle those compulsive urges. To join us now and ask a question or make a comment. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you.
My name is Bill. I'm an alcoholic. I'm the son of an alcoholic, and my father was the adopted son of an alcoholic. A quick rundown of my problem. My wife left me. We were in Florida, had a nice home. I have a nice job. My wife left and came back to her home in Minneapolis. I'm here today because she wants to divorce me, and I'm going to give that to her. But the problems that I am worried about are my child. He was taken from the home, and we've been separated for 15 months. He really doesn't express his feelings to me. And what I'm interested in is what he might feel, how he might react to alcohol later on in his life, and does he feel like he is responsible for the breakup of this marriage?
Let me go ahead and ask you, too. Have you sought some treatment?
Have I?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. I'm currently under treatment for alcoholism, and I'm recovering now. Yeah, but that doesn't change the way that my marriage has gone. To my wife, the trust is gone, and she says that she cannot be married to me anymore. That's what alcohol does. Alcohol is a great lie that a lot of people believe. And it's so great an influence on you that it destroys you physically, mentally, and spiritually. It even tells you that there is no God. That's how big of a force it is and how great of a lie it is.
Emily, what can you tell this gentleman about his son's future?
Well, I think that the important thing is what's happening right now, and I would advise the family to get treatment together. And even if a marriage is in the process of ending or has even ended, it's sometimes very helpful for parents to sit down with the child or children and a family therapist and really work through a lot of these feelings.
Laura, how did you find that the drinking in your household with your dad affected you as you were growing up?
Really, when I was smaller, I don't really remember. Like I was telling them earlier, growing up was actually quite enjoyable. We had everything that a family would want. It got to be when I was older, when I guess I noticed more and wasn't in bed at an early time, when I'd noticed my mom and dad arguing, and when my room was also closer to where the family would gather. You know, I'd hear them arguing. But basically, growing up, I didn't have a miserable childhood at all. Like I said, I never went without or anything.
And as an adult, how do you find that it's had an effect?
I look back and it bothers me because my sister went through a lot. I myself didn't, but my sister went through a lot, and we went to counseling, family counseling, and my father did go through AA for a while. But then when my sister was done with it, he stopped.
Emily, in your book, you have several indicators of self-tests that people can take to determine how they may have been affected, and we're going to take a look at some of those on the screen right now. I believe that the first one is, I take care of people, but no one takes care of me.
I think everyone here has kind of alluded to that as being a very big issue in their past, and being over-responsible and not being able to get a lot of our own needs met because we're so busy being caretakers of the world. It's a big issue.
And is it that they truly are being caretakers in their adult life, or that because they continue to feel that they are, even though they may not be?
No, there are many, many caretakers who are adult children of alcoholics, and what they have to learn to do is take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at another one of those here. No matter what happens, I feel I get blamed for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is what that man was talking about with his son, his fear that the kid is going to grow up feeling it's all my fault. And obviously, one of the main teachings of Al-Anon is, you know, I didn't cause it, I can't cure it, and I can't control it. And I think that anyone from an alcoholic family has to realize that, you know, it was not, and it will never be their fault.
You nodded your head on that one. Why?
I think everybody in this group really nods a lot when everybody can recognize what's happened. I myself am a lost child, and my question is, it's something really of the bizarre nature. My father wrote me a letter. He's the alcoholic. Told him what I was doing, and he caught me on one of those Wednesday nights right after group when you just have all the floodgates open. And I wrote him a very straightforward letter, and my sister called me and she said, "What did you do to Dad? Dad called me, he's crying and everything, and he really feels bad, you know, oh no, did something wrong." But it's totally changed the man around. He was my father's traditional Archie Bunker. And now he's very sweet, very wonderful, he's understanding, he helps me with things instead of criticizing. I know I didn't do the right thing, but I kind of call it the miracle of 1 in 1,000 that worked out. What do you suggest for somebody when they do something like this, or should they, I should say?
Well, I think you should accept the fact that the results seem to prove that you did do the right thing, and I don't think there's any wrong thing, that we all tend to do what we hope will be the best thing, and sometimes it turns out to be the best and sometimes not. But obviously we do learn from our mistakes, but I don't think that was a mistake. I think it opened up communication, and certainly you know, there's nothing wrong with crying and allowing feelings to come out for your father or for yourself. And there's a great deal to be gained from that kind of sharing.
Let's go on with the list here and take a look at some others. Next one here, I think I'm just no good.
I talked about that before too. It's just I'm not good, or I'm not good enough, and the feelings of low self-esteem are really very, very prevalent in people who have grown up in dysfunctional families, and they are always questioning themselves, you know, and not really giving themselves credit for just who they are. And you have to really kind of nudge people to get them to look at the plus side and the many strengths that they have. They're very tuned in to all the things that are wrong, or they think are wrong.
I'd just like to add to that a little bit. One of the things that I really got into in my life and my recovery is looking outside of myself for approval and things outside of me to say I'm okay and I'm good and I'm worthwhile and these things. And what I've learned and what's really necessary for me in my recovery is to look inward and to tell myself that rather than getting other people to do that for me. And that's taking responsibility for myself and my own recovery, and that's what it's all about for me in developing my own self-worth and self-esteem.
Let's just tick down the list here of some of the others. We've already talked about number 4. It's hard for people to be close to me. It's probably my fault that my family has so many problems.
Probably.
Kathy's nodding her head. That's one that you obviously felt. You were responsible for this?
I was an only child, and so I felt like the whole family revolved around me in some way. That if anything went wrong, it was my fault. That I was responsible for somehow holding the family together, and that was an impossible setup for me. So that I always felt like it was also up to me to fix things and to somehow make it better.
Number 6, people say I could achieve more, but I don't have the self-confidence. Anybody nodding their head up there? Yeah, we've talked about this already. Why the self-confidence? Why is that such a problem?
I would say it goes beyond self-confidence, and that I think one of my biggest characteristics, or the thing that happened to me, was what I call shame. That it wasn't just that I felt bad about something I had done, it was an overall feeling about who I was, that I wasn't good enough, that there was something wrong or defective about me.
But let's address this question. Each of you has explained some of this because you are an adult child of an alcoholic parent. Are there other factors that come into play here, or can all of this be explained by the alcoholism? Who wants to tackle that?
That really can't. One of the things I had to stop doing is blaming that so I could get well, you know, because that was my excuse to stay sick and to stay the same and continue the way I was. And I had to stop excusing and blaming things outside of myself and my family and my addiction and things of this nature, and own it and say, this is me, this is what's going on, what can I do to change it, what can I do, instead of what can they do? Because I spent a lot of time trying to change them, and it never works, and it won't.
These are not issues that are strictly struggled with by adult children
No,
of
they're very
alcoholics.
human issues, and I think that, you know, kind of letting go and just sort of taking responsibility for ourselves is, everybody that I know deals with that almost on a daily basis, and it certainly happens in all kinds of families.
We are talking about adult children of alcoholic parents.
Sunshine of your life, Minute Maid.
Minute Maid with calcium. Now orange juice is even more nutritious.
We are the taste that starts your day, Minute Maid.
Healthy bodies need calcium, and every glass has more calcium than a glass of milk. You can't buy a more nutritious orange juice.
Minute Maid. Minute Maid. We are the sunshine of your life.
What are you feeding your body now?
A pure taste sensation.
Eggo Nutri-Grain waffles. Hey, these are good for you.
Well, they're good for my taste buds, yeah.
Come on, Fred, it's Nutri-Grain. It's whole grain goodness. It's, read my lips, nutritious.
I'm eating something nutritious?
Eggo Nutri-Grain waffles from Kellogg's, original and raisin and bran.
And get this, no preservatives.
And there's no sugar added. Hey, let go my Eggo.
Sorry, Fred, but something this good could send that body into shock.
Hey.
This was Peppy Schroeder before Nutrisystem, and this is Peppy Schroeder after Nutrisystem. Flavorless diets used to force me to cheat and fail, but the new Nutrisystem Flavor Set Point Weight Loss Program gives you all the flavor you need to succeed, plus the maintenance and support to keep your success. I lost 65 pounds 9 months ago, and I haven't gained them back.
Call today for your free NutriData computer analysis. We succeed where diets fail you.
Hello, Mother.
Hello.
We're the Cinnamon Toast Crunch Bakers.
I know.
Of course you do.
It does taste like cinnamon toast.
Like homemade. We use the finest ingredients, like whole wheat.
That's good.
With sprinkles of real cinnamon and sugar. Less sugar than most kids' cereals.
That's great.
Bacon homemade taste. Better leave some for the kids.
In the Cinnamon Toast
Crunch.
Hi, I'm Wendy Lubavitch. Be sure to join me later today for Eyewitness News Midday. We'll take a look at toys for adults. Eyewitness News Midday at 11:30.
We We are talking about the adult children of alcoholic parents. We have another person with a question this morning. Go ahead, you're on Twin Cities Live.
Good morning. I have two questions. I'm an adult child, and I'm the oldest of 5. I have a son that is the oldest of 4, and he's 10. I know that I can give him love and give him some of the things I learned from my group, but what else can I do for that 10-year-old?
Any advice?
It sounds to me like giving love is the most important thing any parent can do for any child, and I just think just keep giving it and giving lots of it to all children. And I think that love in itself is a very healing, has a very healing power and effect on kids, and that it's terrific. And sometimes when people come from homes where it wasn't normal to be affectionate and to show love, it's a little hard, but I think like anything else, it takes practice.
Kathy, did your parents say, "I love you," when you were growing up?
I certainly don't remember it being said very often, and I believe that they loved me now, but at the time I didn't feel their affirmation and their validation of who I was.
Let's talk a little bit about how you deal with that relationship with your parent once you become an adult. Do those of you, Mike, you have a relationship of some nature with your parents at this point?
Very little relationship. I tried to do an intervention on my father a year ago because he went back to drinking after recovering. He went back to drinking, and it was unsuccessful. And since then, I've tried to establish a relationship, but after a while, it just wasn't worth it for me. And so that's kind of where I'm at with my father. And for my mother, that's a very difficult relationship also.
And what do you do in those kinds of situations then? Just is the key that you just have to reach a point where you say, it's not my problem. If you don't want to deal with it, I can't control it any further, and cut off the relationship?
I don't think it's a good idea to cut off a relationship. I think that sometimes we have to accept the fact that a relationship is limited because of something like a disease that keeps people at a distance from us. But that doesn't mean it's going to be that way all the time. But cutting off is not the answer, I don't think, because we're still emotionally tied, even if we're not talking to or seeing our parents.
Hi, I'm an ACOA and I'm in recovery right now, and I, in a way, want to build up my relationship with my parents, and they're drinking, and I want to know if that's possible to do that while they're drinking, or if I should just stay away from that right now.
I think the important thing right now is for you to work on your own recovery, because again, it's very hard to have a relationship with someone who's drinking, because drinking is the most important thing in that person's life, and unfortunately, you're just have to play second part. And but if you take care of yourself, that's the most important thing right now.
We have another person with a question on the phone. Go ahead. Good morning.
Yes, I'm a father of 3 children, and I'm an alcoholic. And I was wondering at what age I should start discussing this with my children. My son's 3, my second son is 2, and I have a daughter that's 3 months, and I'm just wondering at what age do I start discussing with them that their father is an alcoholic?
When they start asking about it. I have 2 children, aged 7 and 9, and in the schools, thank God for this, now they have Just Say No to Drug programs, and they have a lot of prevention programs and educational programs. And my children ask about it, they talk about it, and I think just being there and them having access to you in regards to conversations about it is very important.
Should you allow your own children to taste alcohol? How should you control that?
I won't allow mine. They probably will, but it's not going to be by my consent.
I was involved in an attempted intervention, unsuccessful, about a year ago, too, and I'm wondering what the best advice you can do to get on with your life in a case like that, because it's just something that's chronic, and I'm, have to admit that there's really nothing I can do about it anymore with my father.
Are you tempted to just try and cut off the relationship altogether?
I have, essentially, for the past year.
And yet you said, don't do that.
Well, in my book, Hope, I talk about several interventions, one that worked and one like yours that didn't work. And in a way, it worked because at least a seed was planted, even if a person wasn't able to accept treatment. And I think the important thing for you now is to really get on your own recovery path, and to probably, if you're not already going to Al-Anon, ACOA, or getting into some kind of group with other adult children, so that you can work on your own issues. And maybe later on there'll be another intervention, but for now, to really kind of focus on yourself and your own recovery program.
Perfectionism is really an issue for adult children. I wonder if some of you could address, how you deal with perfectionism and how you can begin to work your way out of it.
Why is it that there is this desire to be perfect? Is it to want to control?
For me, what it was the only way that I could please, or at least thought I could please my mom. It was like, if I could just be good enough, be perfect enough, get good grades in school, then somehow I would get some ounce of good feelings. And I kept pursuing this and pursuing it and kind of set up a facade so I didn't have to face the real pain that was inside of me.
And we will continue talking about that issue and the others that adult children of alcoholic parents have to face in just a minute. Stay with us.
Comedian Robin Williams says that he's one of the few people able to make him laugh from his soul. On the next Oprah Winfrey Show, meet one of America's most brilliant comedians and performers. Jonathan Winters will be here for a wacky look into one of the wildest imaginations on the planet. He is heralded as the master of improvisation. Jonathan Winters on the next Oprah Winfrey Show.
Tuesday afternoon at 4 on Channel 5.
Trained to be a medical administrative assistant, the new medical secretary at Lakeland Academy. Start a career using modern computers. In 9 short months, you'll be ready for work.
I love what I'm doing.
I love what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing.
We'll help you find a job when you graduate. Call 827-5656. Top flight instruction. Lakeland Medical Dental Academy. Call 827-5656. Call now, 827-5656.
5 cups of Freestone peaches, 150 Montmorency cherries, 2 pounds of Northern Spy apples. These have to be Mrs. Smith's natural juice pies because each one is bursting with fruit. No ordinary pie piles this much fruit under a tender, flaky crust. So much fruit that it actually bakes in its own natural juice. That's why this isn't just any pie. This is a Mrs. Smith's natural juice pie. It's in a class by itself.
Big juicy blueberries bursting as they bake. Keebler makes new elfin loaves just like Mom used to make. Only smaller.
The Keebler elves bake real fruits, nuts, and spices into snacking-size elfin loaf snap breads. Then wrap them. Then rush them fresh to your grocer's freezer.
Blueberry, banana, carrot, raisin, or a snack or a rake.
New Keebler elfin loaves.
Just like Mom used to make. Only smaller.
Mike, out of this group, you are the one that is married today. How should a spouse of an adult child, of an alcoholic parent, it sounds long, but it's important there, I mean, that connection, how should that spouse be dealing with that adult child?
Well, that's almost a dangerous question for me because there's a tendency I have to try to fix my wife all the time. So what I think she did the best thing she could do, and that's ask me to get help. You know, I think, and then for her, you know, she has sought help in her own way. She's got professional help. She's sought through self-help programs. Because I think dealing with me is tough. It's not easy to deal with me.
Are there patterns, Emily, in the kind of people that these adult children will marry? Are there traits that are evident?
I think that very often people do get into relationships with people who are addicted or into recovery, and I think it's very important for each person to get on their own recovery path, and that really is the best advice for anyone who's involved. And I think, sure, that anyone who comes from an alcoholic family is probably going to be attracted to people who come from, if not alcoholic, other kinds of dysfunctional families, because it feels very familiar.
Sure.
Hi. I'm nervous here. Okay. My question, I just became a parent a year ago, and all of a sudden I wanted a family for my child, so now I'm wanting to be a family with my family, who, by the way, both my parents are alcoholics, and I have a brother that's an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. And all of a sudden I'm in this family, and I'm getting back into all the same family system. I sort of got out of it, and then when I had a kid, it's like I want grandparents, I want aunts and uncles, and all of a sudden I realized I don't want these grandparents I don't want these aunts and uncles. And I'm wondering, is it more detrimental to my child to have him around those people or just keep him away?
One of the things that I've really realized in the last couple of years is how much I really do care for my dad and how much I love him. And one of the biggest things I was able to do is to let go and stop trying to control him and change him, and just accept him for who he is and where he's at and what he's about, and that he has an illness. And sure, it's maybe not the relationship I would have liked, like Donna Reed or Father Knows Best, but this is what I got. And I love him dearly, and because of me changing my attitude, I've been able to blossom this new relationship with him that I really cherish. And that's my whole family now.
But do you think, though, that this could be more problems down the line for her own child? I think that's one of the things she's asking is this going to do more damage than good for my child?
I can't say for sure, but I can just speak for myself. You know, them people are real, and they're going to be around, and they're part of you, and your child's part of you, and no matter what, that child, if you keep them away, is going to be curious. You know, so I think we need to deal with our own attitudes about things and evolve that and get into our own support system and our own recovery program. And with that, maybe it's surprising how they change.
We have another caller with a question. Good morning, you're on Twin Cities Live.
This is me, right?
Yes, go ahead.
Is there a difference between being an alcoholic and having a drinking problem? My parents were able to drink 1 or 2 drinks sometimes and stop. I think yes, but I've been told that one is an alcoholic only if they can't stop after 1 drink. Also, my brothers are far worse than my parents were. Is this normal? Common?
That's hours of discussion on that one.
I think the important thing, if people think that they have a drinking problem, I would say just address the problem, and that I usually think if it's a problem, then it's alcoholism, but I think each person has to make that decision for himself or herself.
Hi. I know as I get healthy, I'm able to recognize manipulative behavior that other people try and use on me, like maybe family members or a close friend or something.
What kind of behavior?
Well, with my mother, I'm the last child at home, and she's a recovering alcoholic, and she doesn't want to let me go. I think she feels really bad for not really being there for when I was growing up. And now she's trying to make it up to me by trying to keep me at home, saying, you don't have to pay rent. When you go to college, you can just stay home. And I want to be on my own. And when she's doing this, what she's really doing is pushing me away.
Are you wondering how you should deal with this?
Yeah, I am. And also, like, the resentment with, as you get healthy, your relationships with some of your friends don't suit you anymore. And you can tell that they're bad. Mm-hmm. And I'm having a problem with one of my other friends.
A lot of big changes that are forced here, aren't there? You're all nodding your head. Mike, what should she do?
Well, my first response to the last question is I really relate. I don't think I have any of the same friends I had when I first recovered, not a one. It's sad. It's really painful because they were wonderful people, but it was not a healthy relationship. And as far as caretaking...
But you do have your wife.
I do have my wife, that's true. There's one. And that relationship...
Don't try to change her too much.
That relationship has changed immensely. And in response to the first question is caretaking, there's nothing I hate worse when somebody tries to caretake me. It's like, cut that out. Because it's like, I don't want to... That was the way I was raised as a child, and it's painful. And the best thing I can do is just keep working my own program.
I think half the battle for you is just realizing what's going on and understanding the manipulation and knowing what you need to do and just doing what you do need to do with help and support from new friends you're going to find.
And it seems like she's made some of those most important steps. And we will be back in just a minute.
That's great.